Hi guys, today is the first time I'm going to attempt to do a tutorial on one of the Genshin Impact characters. So let's go ahead and start with a sketch. For your information, I'm using the A4 canvas. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the studio pen. Before I had my Airbrush set, this was the pen I used to go to for everything. So I quite like it. So I want to go ahead and start with my sketch, which basically is quite loose. We're just going to try and get the proportions in for everything important. So we got those arms, here we've got the torso. So yeah, getting in here with a rough sketch. I know it's looking rough but we gotta start somewhere to get somewhere. And I'm probably going to move over the entire figure in a minute so that we've got a bit more space. I'm going to move the whole sketch because it's on one layer over a bit, so I have some space. Immediately, things that come to mind is that the head isn't positioned well, so it's basically a little bit to the left, and I want to make sure that it's definitely leaning towards the right, something like this. This is sort of the line I'm going to use as my center line, so she's looking sort of with the chin down, angled, and to the right. I'm going to use a studio pen and eraser. I was using one of my own bigger brushes, but it doesn't really matter. Just something you have control over that you can use to make nice and sharp lines with, or erase full things. We've got the head, and on the head we've got the hat sitting towards the top, and we're gonna go ahead and start refining everything. So our neck is definitely needing to sit below the head a bit more, and the shoulders come up towards what seems to go a little bit more out here. So I want to go and make that come out, and I want to make sure this here looks really angled. So I'm just going to basically curve this one a bit more, which is sort of coming around and flaring out at the side here. And then up here we've got a little bow as well, or some ornamental thing. Bulb is at the top like this, sort of like a jellyfish hat I'm just going to use for the top part. We've got the arm, and then we've got the scepter straight away coming down here, and we've got the hand, so coming out a little bit, whoops, with the black coming out a bit here, and then with the knuckle showing on the left side of the scepter of the first finger is fully showing, then the second finger is leaning on the scepter, and the third finger was peeking out behind that one, but less conspicuously. I think it looks almost like a natural extension of the second finger. And then we've got the thumb, which meets where the first two fingers sort of combine. We've got the edge where you can see the other fingers are sort of coming along. We've got a small pinky here. Also the pinky, the angle of that one matters. It's sort of coming down like this. And then we've got the last part where it sort of goes around a bit more like that. We have a bulb here, and actually before it comes into the bulb it's a little bit thicker, so let's go ahead and just add that shape in a triangular way like that up here with the actual feet. So whether or not we have not positioned the actual legs well, which I think is the case, let's go ahead and do that. This leg, let's try and get that a bit bigger so you can see it. It's a good way to look at your positioning, where is stuff, and then I guess that makes sense for us here. If you wanna look at where exactly to position other things, this is a good way to go ahead and mark out where it is. I think we might be okay with the rest. We'll see how we go, because we still have obviously quite a bit to go. But yeah, so yeah, let's go ahead and make sure that we get the rest down well. Another thing I just realized is that this leg here also sort of meets with the elbow part, or it just slightly protrudes it. So in my case, I definitely need to adjust, as you can see, the leg in any case. So I'm gonna go ahead and erase. It's quite helpful for the clothing as well. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna make my pen a bit smaller again. Here, this seems to be alright, this positioning, because it definitely goes further. And then we just want to make sure that the clothes and all that work with it. So she's got a gem going on in here. And the edge of the jacket here, I've sort of drawn and erased over. So this is the edge of the tunic. Probably needs to be a bit higher, to be honest, to match with the rest of the tunic going around. So basically having, you know, this sort of curve at the edge of the tunic. And this is probably too big, but we'll fix this in a minute. Let's grab the black again, and then over here we just want to add our ribbons. So sort of one is going down, and looking at this, there is a skirt or something in the background, or like a cape. So I want to go ahead and I'll use a lighter color, gray, and then it sort of goes in and then it goes out. Otherwise it would make sense. So I'm going to grab my tassels and my ribbons like this. You go into adjustments and liquefy. Hopefully this will work. With the size, first of all, you want to make sure it's push, and then with the size up of the brush, you can go ahead and move your ribbons, erase anything. This helped me definitely with the curvature, the curve for the knee. And then we've got the actual other leg meeting here, thinner legs. Let's tidy the whole shape up a little bit. Like I said, it's not meeting the actual head when we go up with it, so let's try and remember that. And then it's got like this sort of curved shape where it comes together before the knee, and then the knee comes out. Actually, it's coming out here, but the leg is generally speaking angled down a bit more, so there's less visible of it. And then we have got this, you know, this stuff here again. And let's go ahead and add our triangles at the top. And then we've got this here going down in a 3D shape like this one. And let's go ahead and add the curves at the bottom to match the top like this. So that here we've got the sleeves quite close to the actual elbow. Then here I want to grab the pen, and we've got the small finger coming up, and then we've got the next finger extending a bit more, and then we've got two fingers crossing over here, 1 and 2, and the thumb. And obviously this isn't the right angle at the bottom here, so I'm going to go ahead and move these guys with this torch. Something like that. All right. Here's a sketch for the hand. Yeah, I'm quite happy with this. I have to say this is fine for now. And this is where the inner thingy is. Okay, so that's one. And then we've got another layer out here. I've skipped the rest of the sketching part because that's all pretty straightforward and logical. You have to add like all the stuff that's missing around. But if you want to see the full version, it's available on my channel. Nice. Happy days. Alright, let's go ahead with our coloring. So we've got the sketch, and I want to usually go and add my colors on top, to be honest. For the For the actual shading in and for the coloring, I generally prefer to use my own brush, the defined coloring brush. If you haven't got my brushes, which most of you probably won't, a great alternative to this one is the syrup. So you can definitely do that with that one, you don't need to worry. There's more info on my brushes down below, but yeah, the syrup definitely, and the syrup would be in the inking section, I believe, here. So I would recommend that one. Let's go and go on our new layer. Something like this. I'm gonna start with the top hat. I'm just going to add my basic colors as I go. We've got the next part of the ribbon, which is also gonna be blue. To be honest, it's dark. I'm gonna grab a darker color blue for that one. It's sort of in the shadow. It has got a white or a gray strip though. The others have got white strips. So I'm just gonna add the whites in there. There's also shadow in the ribbons here, so I'm gonna add a darker shadow fold color here. Like this, following the shadow parts. We've got a shadow here, but it's more saturated. Something like this. And we're gonna also be correcting the colors, obviously, when we are refining things. Drawing, we've got a bit of a round shape here that tapers off into sharp edges and has got a bit of a gold on top. The gold is quite orange, quite warm, and a lot lighter, something like that. I'm gonna grab an even lighter one and just give that a highlight real quick. I want to give this a nice outline as well. And then there is sort of the same kind of gold sticking out here over the edge of that background fold. And then there's two areas here, I don't know what they are, with outlines. We've got a blue. All of these ribbons are sort of converging in here, so they would cover that part a bit better. And then in here we have got a dark edge to the ribbon, which we want to give an outline to as well. And here, oh great, and here. The outlines within, sometimes they are lighter, they're not quite black. Something else to remember for me. And here we've got a bit of a lighter edge to it. And this one is definitely a little bit darker and more intense in color. Same here. And that one's also got a really dark outline. And then this one has got a highlight on it coming up like that. And then this here is sort of a bit more flat and nice. And then this here has got a bit of a shading to it too. So we've got a bit of a lighter part, we've got a bit of a darker part, and shadow from this larger gold thing here. I'm gonna give that a black outline, and man, it's pixelated, isn't it? I feel like my eyes are going a bit funny. We want to grab a lighter orange for this one for the first highlight. These guys, you get highlights, and then you've got a really bright one. Later on we can intensify the colors and the shine of things with various blending mode layers, but I think it's always good to just get as much as possible right without any blending mode layers. And oh, I think there's a teardrop in there. First of all, we've got a black outline around, and then there is a beautiful gem in my, from what I can see here anyways. It's much brighter in turquoise around the edges, and it's got a dark, really strong blue in it, and it's got a much colder, brighter blue towards the bottom. Well, not that bright, but definitely more saturated. And then we've got a shadow coming over here. And at the very top, we've got another bit of reflection, I believe. Maybe not quite that white and more turquoise. All right. I don't know, there is another bit of something there. I'm just gonna leave that because it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't make much sense. And yeah, also we've got a white edge on the other side here. And also, and here, this is nice, the white actually goes gray, doesn't it, where there is more shadow. So I want to go ahead and add a shadow to that gray, and around we've got more shadows on these edges. Okay, and then what else? This guy here is dark as he is. That's fine. We can give him a two-tone, and I'll grab a darker color to give this guy a bit of an outline, and these guys here just to sharpen things off. And then this like golden stuff has got more sharp outlines. This one is definitely darker at the edge, and so is this one. We've got this over here. We've got a darker blue over here and in here, following the shape of the shadow on the actual white parts, which is quite cool. I'm going to add a bit of a boundary here as well. And again, there's sort of this gray outside, which I'm going to give this guy a little bit on the side here as well, even if the reference doesn't have that. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to grab a slightly desaturated, slightly grayer version of this blue over here, just to give this a bit of an extra oomph. And also, there seems to be a black pattern at the top, so let's go ahead and add a darker blue to that a little bit, just for some various folds here. Okay, that's quite dark. I'm going to go over it with a darker blue, but that's not quite that dark. There, I think that's all right. We have got a bit more variation in color down here. And also that's kind of actually covered up, but oh well. Okay, we have got a bunch of gold stuff on the top hat itself, so we should probably go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my sketch layer, hide one for safekeeping, and then the other one I'm going to go in and erase wherever I feel like. And let's grab a dark outline. In this case, it's actually looking red. We have got an edge here with a nice ornament coming up. One. Go ahead and grab our darker orange for the base of the gold. That's really dark, but alright, let's go ahead. Yep, it's definitely going to be a drawing by me, not by Genshin Impact, because there are already too many inconsistencies, but we're going to make it look bangy. A lighter triangle to the top part. This is definitely desaturated, so let's go. A nice edge to it. This here too. And this is definitely where we need to blend something a little bit, but for that I just use the same brush in blending, and obviously if you're using the syrup brush, then I would recommend that one. Just carefully. I think the syrup brush is a little bit stronger and happens quicker. Everything. Okay, I quite like this so far. The edge is a little bit thicker. The side edge has got a darker edge to it, by the way, inside, and a lighter edge that's more yellow towards the bottom here. And yeah, you don't have to do all that, but because I try to go for it as close as possible, it's good practice for me, and I quite enjoy it, I guess. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this, although I do have a headache right now. But yeah, it's good practice. Character building. Then over here, these guys are a little bit darker and then get a bit of a highlight. Don't see too much. Bit of a stronger curve here. And also a darker boundary between these guys. And also a heck of a lot of highlights, so let's go and add some lighter shading to this, 1 and 2, also boundary in here, but not too big, so it doesn't matter. This guy, this here has got a bit of shading, I forgot. 1 coming over here as well. And up here, in this hoop, and this ball. This guy here, and this guy here. On the edge of this one, and then this one. Trying to replicate the same sort of curve here on either side. Alright. Cleaning up with the eraser as I go. To be honest, this edge could be a bit bigger, a bit wider, and also what is really interesting is that there is a little bit more desaturated lighter parts in here to the ground and also towards this edge up here. And this is more gray. Not the Apple pencil as well. Okay, so we've sort of got these guys. I'm just gonna add some outlines to this here to really redefine this stuff, and let's give this guy some highlights. And yeah, here we are. Here we are. Just that one edge here that is a little bit darker anyways. And a little bit more gray is here. So yeah, I think that's maybe one more highlight, whoa, to that one, and then that's all right. Okay, I mean, this guy could use a bit more below. And this one most definitely could use some more shading, outline. I don't have a very steady hand either, so yeah. Let's do the teardrops that are sitting below these guys here. 1, 2, sort of on the same level, and as you can see, I've already done this here a little bit wrong. Let's grab the light turquoise. Really saturated color. It's actually not turquoise, it's actually more blue. And from here we can grab a darker, more saturated blue, much darker, and basically make sure you've got a nice outline around it. And I think we could just go ahead and smudge that back like that, and just grabbing a tip of that really bright color and then merging it with the other, going backwards. Something like that. This is still a little bit too far up, so I'm just going to grab that and pull that down. Is that about right? I mean, in the reference picture it's actually a lot bigger. Okay, it's even bigger than that, alright. Man, okay, I'm just gonna go with this size. I know it's going over the edge of the hat in theory, but yeah. And also it's already pixelated enough. I don't need to play around with it anymore. In the case of pixelation, let's go back with the brightest color and just make sure that the edge of the top here is really defined in both cases. And then there's actually a reflection in the back here. You want to grab a darker blue for the outline and make sure that's really nice and strong. And in that case, to be honest, the actual rest of the pixelation isn't too bad. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that this is more or less smudged out one more time. And also, especially at the back, this one needs to be smudged out quite a bit. It's just a reflection at the end there. And later on with the blending mode layers, we can give this here some serious light, some serious strength and light. Okay, happy days. Actually, that makes me realize which is why this here seems so small, because actually this and the teardrop is a lot bigger. So we go have a look if we can rectify that. So basically, you go into the actual layer where you are working on here, and I want to go ahead and make sure this is longer and bigger. So I'm just going to go in and copy paste once you've got it. So it should appear on a new layer, and here with the uniform you can go in and make it bigger. Now something that I obviously don't want to do is have this top part be really big like this, and I want to make sure that the actual stone isn't quite so like limited. It's supposed to be a little bit lower, I think, and it can be a bit bigger, I think. So I'm just going to go with this, and then also make this here smaller. This is where obviously digital art is really helpful. So we still have the original in there just in case, but I'm just going to draw on this new layer and basically fix what I had done before. Go in with the really bright colors. Make sure you've got those other darker colors in there too, and most importantly the outlines. You've got a nice and strong highlight here. And we've got a really dark saturated blue in here too, just sort of on the edge. And then for this guy here, we've got that dark outline, we've got this warmer gold color, and we've got a nice highlight to that. Even brighter, like that. And then just because this is still on the new layer and not on the other layer, I'm just going to paint over where it would have been, like where the other stuff is showing, like that. And that is a relative simple correction, I guess, really. Anyways, that's that. I think I'm okay with this so far. I'm ready to move on. I know we've got the hair. We haven't done the hair yet, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead on a new layer. We've got a really pale skin tone. Really pale, but quite like pinky. That's a little bit too dark. I'm going to go with this color here, which is a very bright, sort of in between orange and red color. Here I want to go ahead. We've got a dark reddish brown outline for the face. The hair is extending to the edge here. Basically, I have one darker color for the outline, one slightly lighter but still darker blue for the base coloring fill. I'm still figuring out my position, to be honest, so until then I won't be refining the colors. I will move the top hat in a minute a bit more to give more space for the hair, and then once I've positioned it a bit better, I will start refining with lighter colors. Yep, and so I do need to move that a little bit up, I think. But I might be just that I'm making a fool of myself. Okay, let's go in and grab that same color and just make up what we've lost here. And we've got the one that's coming around, and then we've got that one that's coming over here to over the lapel. We've got the bigger hair strand over here. And okay, let's grab some darker colors. I'm going to go in with a darker, well, maybe lighter but more saturated blue over here for this part, for this shadow. Then it's got this one coming over it, and we've got our first white to go in there. Actually, that's not white. Something like this we've got coming over here. We've got this one here in white up to the top. This one is quite a broad strand of white. We've got one coming over. We've got this here is quite thick, isn't it? And then there is a separation. With this final strand, and then we've got one over here, obviously this guy. And then this one. I want to go in with a darker gray shadow and just basically separate some of these pieces out a bit better. We've got this one, for example, here, which has a shadow at the top. We've got a shadow over there. Now this hairpiece is a little bit less thick over here. Tiny hairpiece over here. One and also another one on this side. Also a bit more bluish and a bit more of a darker blue really. Just want to get a bit darker here. Basically we've got this one coming up like that. Here there's sort of like a Y in the shadow. Also, I don't think I've got this part here right, obviously, because I feel like the hat is actually, again, sort of not really matching up with where my lines are. We've got a thicker strand of white over here, or in this white, and down here. Which is also a lot more, grey, in this lighter grey. We've got a very saturated turquoise in here, followed by a shadow in a bit more dark blue, also sort of shaped like a V, but this time the other way around. Okay, and then there's a tiny one here that's a lot whiter over there, and more turquoise around it. And then we've got a bit of white here. Just color pick the navy blue here and go a bit darker for the actual jacket. And then here is another part where I can see inconsistencies with the actual reference. In my sketch, this part is too big, too far on, so I'm gonna grab this and just sort of try and make that a bit smaller. And place it further back. Like that, and we'll see what happens, but I think that sort of gets the actual staff into a better position. Something like that. Okay, let's go back to that outline we've got for the actual stuff here. I'm gonna add the blue up here too, even though it's not really blue anymore in many places. And then we're gonna build on that. We've got a really bright part here in blue first, and then it sort of goes up into black. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that highlight. And then this part is more grey. Then there is a fold, so it's going to be darker, especially towards the back. And then at the top here, we've also got that blue, and we have a turquoise, or rather blue, bright blue little ribbon here again. And then we've got a more navy blue edge to the top of the jacket here. Going into the darker part. And then we've got that ribbon coming down. And a lighter part to the ribbon. Add on a new layer and add the lapel stuff up here, and basically going in with a light blue first. I'm gonna just basically add the first layer on top of all the scribble stuff following the reference. Then I'm gonna give this an outline for some clarity. We have got a bit of a lighter blue next. One, and then the main fold in the middle here. And a bit of a darker and deeper blue over on the right side here. And with the black we want to go in and give this a bit of a shape. Down here we've got one more, and I think we'll make that even brighter. This isn't that big, but does stand out. And also here with the black or a dark blue, adding these lines, giving it some definition will really help. Yeah, and that sort of shows us where all our other stuff is, even if this, for example, isn't quite right. Just gonna add some basic shadows around here. We've got one in here too, and over here. And this fold here as well. Now I know why there aren't any other Genshin Impact tutorials, because it takes ages. Okay, and then for the edge here, really defining that one, and here. I'm gonna go a bit lighter for this shadow. And then erase the parts that don't make much sense or that stick out, that you can see. So yeah, this is sort of the actual top part, and I think that explains why everything else is like looking a little bit off, because it's too high. So in that case, I'm going to go on that lower part where we started with the rest of the clothing, and I'm basically just going to lasso tool everything that we added in here and essentially move it down. Distort it a bit to make it a bit wider, and okay, that's gonna do just fine. I'm gonna just go ahead and make sure that all the parts below are looking like they should before I continue with the detailing. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and add the next stuff. So we've got the other side of the jacket in dark blue first, and then it goes up and it goes a lot lighter. Also showing up sort of the stuff that is at the neck here. Over on this side we've got a bit more of a light blue reflection going on. So I'm just going to go in and add this. Then we've got a dark shadow below that immediately and before we go into the main blue color of this jacket, basically. Although I have chosen a bit of a light color here. So I'll probably have to go in with a slightly darker shadow color. So yeah, let's grab a darker shadow color, and that one is over here. And there's also a boundary here, although that might be a bit dark, not dark enough, but that's right. We've got this edge here, and these parts for the ribbon. Okay, that looks a lot better already, and I'm gonna grab this here and go a little bit more towards blue when I go up to the neck to add the edges up there. So we've basically got these two edges sticking out in a little bit lighter like this, I think. Probably a bit lighter, but just for the initial setting down, that's all right. Let's go a bit lighter again. Oh, thank goodness, it's not on the actual hair. Let's go and get the hair down. Okay, that's all right then, because I didn't want to paint over the hair naturally. That would be a waste of time, if there ever was one. Yeah. Still on the right layer. Grabbing the various blues. There is a shoulder separation here too. So I'm going to grab a darker color for the separation and then go lighter again for the next part of the actual arm. We have got a darker blue down here. Don't think that's dark enough for this shadow first, so I'm going to go ahead with a darker one and add that. This is connecting to the underarm. There's a shadow around this jacket part. We've got a lighter blue in here. That's a little bit more grey. I should be a bit more like that, I think, yeah. And then we've got another clothing fold here with a dark folding line, and same thing at the top here. We've got one here. And this sort of converges down, and then there's one more separation in the darkness. There is a second color that's not quite so dark in here. We've got a couple of blue squares over here turned around like a diamond, and we've got a reflection, and we've got a darker edge down here before it goes back into that lighter blue. It does look like it's going more towards this blue, so I'm just going to follow that. We have got the darker sort of tunic coming around here, which is definitely more purple. So I'm going to go in and add this here next. And as you'll see, there is already a darker part here, parting, and also over here next to the gem. Okay, and then we've got like a fold over here that's also quite dark coming over, and a lighter part. By the way, I think I need to go a little bit lighter here for this and this part and this. And then we've got that darker part here with the actual gem. I love gems, and it's so nice that Furina has got so many. I have been playing Genshin Impact since it came out initially in 2020, but I never completed the game, and I'm quite far back because I really enjoy running around and exploring places without actually doing any quests. So I've definitely not come anywhere far, and I don't have a lot of characters, so that's why I don't know that many, to be honest with you. Alright, so this here's got like a dark thing, obviously a dark edge, and then it goes down to the pants, which are a little bit more grey, like this here should be, to be honest. This here is not grey enough. Grey! So just over here adding some more gray, and then I'm going to use the same gray on this main part here. Alright, down for the actual pants, trousers, I will also grab a slightly different gray. I don't know if you can see the difference, but it does look a little bit darker for one, and then also a bit less saturated, so a little bit more towards the gray and white side instead of the color. I think I've chosen the right one, the right gray, but it feels quite dark. But then we are painting on a white canvas, which also I don't usually do, but since the actual reference is white in the background, I suppose this is how it works. There is a difference here as well. I don't know, the dark isn't quite, like there is a fold in here that we can actually see with the naked eye. So I'm just gonna add that in with a really dark black. And same for the outline of the pants here, and for this part I feel like there's another fold inside. So I'm just gonna do that and also give this guy here a bit of an outline. Same with this blue part, and I know it goes a bit darker towards the ground there, but not too worried. And I'm going to smudge out this part up here. What we can do at the end is always adjust the colors a little bit, so that's why I generally don't worry too much about some things like that. Sometimes I do, and other times I don't, and then I'll just correct it at the end. And this is going to be one of those I'm definitely going to correct in the end. There is a larger outline over here, a bit darker, a bit more shadowy. And a bit more of a light reflection up here. And then the other side is also, oh no, I undid a paintbrush stroke, of course. I never know where it happens, and I hate it, and I've also deactivated it, but thanks Patreon, Procreate. Let's grab a darker one to the actual character body. And we want to have a nice dark outline here, making the arm a little bit thicker as well in my case. So I'm just going to add these in flat, give them a nice dark outline. That's already half of the work done. We've got another quite dark outline here, and final one over here, tapering that off a little bit. And then we've got a golden sort of ornament. I'm going to start with brown, and then I'm going to add a lighter one on top, although if you're using the syrup that might not make too much of a difference. Also giving this one a bit of a dark outline again separately, and I feel like I've done all of that a little bit too yellow, so I'm just going to go in with a slightly lighter, more reddish tone, give it a nice shine. Whoops, we want to go white here, I think. Grab the blue and just make sure that the rest is sort of put together. And then I realized that this here actually points a little bit further upwards, like that. Something like this and this. With these ribbons, I want to grab a darker blue and just add these falls into the actual fabric. And then over here, same thing. Getting some in over here, and obviously here. We've got this shine on the ribbon, which is mostly prevalent in the middle here. I'm going to give this sort of the H shape like that, a bit wider towards the edges. Make sure this here is all nice and even as much as possible. Grabbing, some of this here to make it more even as well. And I think because I smudged this part, I didn't really add the right boundaries. So we've got one here, got one here. And this one. Okay, back to the arm. We've got this dark outline. I'm going to add that down here as well. We've got this sort of coming out, and then over here, this is all quite dark. And then we've got this final bit here. And we've got a line here, and we've got a darker outline. Continuing with the skirt over here, we've got a sort of similar color then to the jacket, but a little bit warmer or cooler, I don't know. I suppose that would be cooler going towards green. Following the outline of the sketch from earlier and making sure that this all has a nice dark border. Although this part obviously has got a little bit of a highlight to it. I don't know, I think the top part must be quite light up here. But it's sort of confusing because it starts over here. We've got, I think this is sort of a color I can use for the back stuff here. So I'm just going to go in over here with this one, especially in the light areas. Basically adding that curve on there as well. And then we've got a dark blue over here. Of course, I'm going to be painting over my stuff. We've got one of the first folds, and also I need to make that a bit more purple. First fold is up here. Second fold is down here. And then everything in between seems to be a little bit lighter. Not painting over the other stuff. I've chosen a slightly different gray and not quite as dark as the surrounding outlines. Well, I'm gonna have to darken the outlines anyways, but yep. And then this here I realized isn't actually quite that low. Actually ends a much higher up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hopefully salvage this. There, I think that even just is better. Just a bit. Okay, so basically just adding all these different colors in and shapes and then refining them in a moment, unlike the top part where I feel like I was just refining as I was going and therefore it takes a lot longer. And with a darker blue, I'm just going to grab that navy from over there, go a bit darker. I'm just going to add these folds over here and make sure that they are a little bit lighter, maybe even lighter, and add them next to the leg. The leg is going to get an outline and all that as well. As you can see, perhaps in the Genshin Impact reference, there is a warm sort of red brown outline to the leg. And then up here there is a slightly lighter edge because it's sort of turning around the fabric, something like this. I'm going to go in and just give this one the highlight already. And in terms of these like shadow gradients that you can see, like where some areas are a bit darker but they fade out quite nicely, I think we're going to grab an airbrush. I'm going to use the hard shading brush from my pack, but the hard airbrush does just fine, so go for that one as an alternative. I'm just basically adding, you can see perhaps a little bit of that light in, and I've added that darker shadow into here as well. In this case, it's okay to just draw over the leg because we're going to have to render out the leg anyways. And then down here, we've also got a bit of a gradient, to be honest, but I don't know if I want to add that yet, to be honest. Yeah, maybe a bit. So basically just adding very gently some of that darkness into this guy over here. Just a bit. And then I'll switch back to the define coloring brush, or in your case, perhaps the syrup, and just continue as usual. Outline, make sure the colors are all relatively even. This is great line practice, I feel like. I am not great at drawing lines, and as you can see, I often have to redo it, but it does get there eventually. Okay, nice, so that's fine. And then I just need to add this here, and nearly got the base done in that case. So I'm gonna grab the blue I've got in here, which is sort of like in the middle of the blues, but I'm gonna go a little bit more desaturated for the lighter areas, and we probably want to go ahead and create a new layer over the others so we can paint over it. Lighter area first, and then this goes into a bit more of a purple, I think, over here. So you've got this one and this here. We've got a lighter blue. I'm just going to make sure that's definitely lighter here in the middle and here. And then there is a darker edge, and followed by the white edges of the bow that we also had on the other bow. So let's go ahead and grab a light white. This is still gray. And then I can just add my highlight white where it's probably whitest, which is sort of at the top here, matching the highlights on your actual bow. And I want to grab a darker blue and add my shadows into the actual bow. We've got a darker and more saturated shadow here, and that is followed by a lighter outline here for reflections, I think. We've got a darker outline as usual with Genshin Impact on the edge here, and then we've got this sort of white border again, which is a bit angled this time. Grabbing that gray again instead of the white, and then the white for the highlights. And then we're going to go in with a darker blue from that shadow and add a slightly lighter edge here. Make sure it's nice and outlined. Something like that. And then on the other side as well, gonna get that outline in, get that white part outlined, and add our shadow in underneath. Gray, white, and in the middle we have our nice and orange light gold, so basically adding our ring. I think in this case I'm going to go quite warm in my darker areas. We've got like a little detailing on the left here that is a bit more intricate, and then on the top we've got a bit of something, and on the other side we also have a sort of leaf ornament before it goes down and crosses over each other beneath. A bit more yellowy maybe, and I'm just going to go in and add these details. And on the other side, 1, 2, 3, something like this. And on the top we have got a cross again, crossing over each other. And below we also have a little bit of a diamond triangle beneath, of which only one side is visible. I'm going to color pick my lighter area again. Before I continue with the gold parts, I want to go ahead and do my ribbon. For that, I just will go ahead and add the blue parts first. The blue parts here are also outlined, not quite so dark as black perhaps, but definitely outlined. And then I want to outline an extra part for the white part that's going to come in too. And then for the part that's below, that's also a lot darker. Not sure if this is too dark or whatnot, but no, I think this is alright. So going in with quite a saturated one, and then for the lighter part sticking out here, I'm going to choose a slightly different hue, so going a bit more cool, and then going a little bit more dark for that edge here, and for the part that sort of falls beneath that first loop of this guy here, the ribbon. Grabbing a slightly darker color for the ribbon here. I feel like that was a little bit too light. Same thing over here. With that, want to follow through with that gray on all sides. And here, this is a little bit too wonky in my opinion, so I'm just going to go over and correct that. And then here also, the top part needs to be a bit more white. And the light part definitely goes further by a bit. Oops, okay, thanks. Maybe not that much then. And I'm just going to outline this one as well. Back to this guy, I'm going to add these fingers into the leaf that we have. And in the middle, we've got our lovely gem. Two, and then the gem inside. Let's start with a really strong blue to cover the area inside. And then I want to grab a turquoise, really strong, and follow the swirls. There's sort of a loop in here, and then there's a reflection over here. And on the top, so in the middle here we've got a much stronger blue first of all, and then we've got like a sort of outline of that turquoise, maybe a bit more blue instead of turquoise here coming over, and then we've got a really bright turquoise. Well, this here is a white to be honest, and then the turquoise is a bit brighter, so adding that brightness over there and the white on the top. But this one also, we can really adjust that saturation and that, you know, how strong and how bright that is when we add our, you know, our blending mode layers in a bit. Alright, just gonna add these little highlights. And a darker color for the edge here. Okay, so we've got two at the top here and one at the very top. Something like that. It's not perfect, I know, but hopefully it'll do for this tutorial for you guys. But you're welcome to just hate on me in the comments, that's fine. I don't care. I do want to make a tutorial for you guys though, so if you have some constructive criticism, please help. And I've gotten this sort of comment before where they, you know, someone said like, oh, please can you do the tutorial more like so-and-so, a different person basically. You know what, if you can't tell me exactly what you want me to change to make it more like them, then that's not very helpful. But I do want to know if, you know, if you want me to change something. Like, I know I don't use colors like telling you exactly which colors to use when, like from a palette, but I think that it limits your skills quite a lot in the long run if you continue to rely on palettes and to be just able to paint whenever, whatever you want. I think that's really going to stop you, so that's why I don't do that. But I try to explain how I use my colors, and I feel like I do explain what I do. But yeah, just tell me what you think. I'm going to go a bit more saturated in these areas here, by the way. Just grabbing that color I added in here, and then basically adding a slightly more saturated one. Extending this light area as well. And making sure this shadow is also more vibrant, a bit lighter and a bit more intense in color. Okay, so here we are. I'm gonna go a bit more intense in the shadow down here as well, like this. I feel like it looks a bit funny because I've got this sort of bow loop in here. I should probably make this more flat and hopefully that'll look a bit better. And I know the top part is also a bit bigger, but I don't know if we can change that so easily at the moment. Perhaps with the liquify tool. Let's check this is all on one layer. Yep, so I'm going to go into liquify with the push option and push this guy up a bit, especially by decreasing the brush size and just pushing this side more. That way. And hope that I'm not ruining it. This one can come out a bit more, and this guy can come up a bit more and maybe a little bit more flat to the side here. The smaller you make your brush size for the liquify tool here, the better. In my opinion, it just is a lot easier to exactly do something. Okay, I think that's a bit better. In this case, I also want to grab a slightly darker color and just add that shadow for the bow, and hoping that will bring things together a bit more. Then we've also got the fact that this here has got a darker edge to it, obviously, but it comes into the edge here, and also it has a bit of a darker edge to this shadow part. And then a bit of a lighter one as reflections in here. That was probably too light down here, so I'm just going to go in with a bit of a darker color. Yep, that's a bit better, and over here too. And I'm going to try and change the size a little bit to match that extended bow as it is in the reference. Something like that. Yep, I am much happier with this already. Then just to make sure we've got our outlines for this golden ornament and it's not being overdrawn, I'm just going to redo these here. And also want to have a bit more intensity in color, so I'm going to add a slightly more dark and saturated turquoise. And then down towards this part here, there is a bit more of that other blue hue in there. And also this has got an outline in here too. So just giving the outline actually does change a lot. again. I mean, I know that's the case, but I'm still always surprised at how much of a difference it really makes. Okay, and then also I want to grab that darker outline and just get more depth in here. Then we've got this little diamond down here that looks like a triangle peeking out, and we've got the other ribbon part. Whoops, that's sort of down below the first part, converging a bit. And particularly the gray part or the white part here, which also needs to be a bit more in the lighter blue in the shadow here, and then I'll go and make it a bit whiter towards the part where it's actually visible. Okay, I'm gonna give this ribbon a bit more of an outline here, this one, and hope that will help to really distinguish the two. And grab a blue for this one below. And then the rest of the bow down here, or the blue, is actually a little bit lighter, to be honest. A bit more in the other direction, a bit more hue, a bit of a cooler hue, I mean. And up here as well. I'm gonna smudge that out a bit though. And nice, oops, not in white. Although I do want to add the other side as well, so I'm going to grab a darker color, hopefully, yep, and just add the white part. First in a sort of blue-gray and then in white. Outline on everything. I want to go and grab and do the legs basically, so I want to go on a new layer. I'm doing that on the very top, and I'm gonna want to grab the skin color. Overall, I think we've got definitely, like I said, a bit more of a reddish pinkish tint, so definitely want to go light. I think that is a good good pull of color, so I'm just gonna go with this. Obviously we've got many different shades in the actual legs, so just gonna go and start on the basic shape, and then maybe even use a clipping layer mask. I'll explain what that is in a minute. And basically color them in. Okay, so that's one. I'm just going to duplicate to make sure I've just gotten everything I need, and I will go below that and basically add my very warm outline color. And because that's on the layer below, I will probably notice that there are some areas where I've sort of done a bit of a zigzag shape with the color, and I can correct that then, but I'm not doing that on the same layer because we are going to use a clipping layer mask, I've just decided now, and there we don't want to draw over these outlines. So I'm going to go back into the main color layer, and I'll just go and basically adjust the areas that I feel like are quite wobbly, and whoops, smooth them out by adding extra color on top. And then in some areas I feel like the outline is a bit too strong or whatever, so I'll just take that away. Too much outline is also a thing. Okay, I'll duplicate the outline, merge the duplicates together. I'm gonna erase a little bit more over here. To the leg, I'll create a new layer on top of that, and with it, you know, in the layer menu that opens when you tap it, just select clipping layer mask, and then you've got a little like arrow down there. And with that one, let's go ahead and with the hard shading brush or with the hard airbrush, color tap the one you've got now, go a little bit more down towards red and a little bit darker, and start adding this as your first shadow. Now I think this is quite dark, but at least it's something to work with. I think the general skin color I pulled is even a little bit too dark perhaps. So I'm gonna go ahead with my hard shading brush in the eraser, and I'm just going to gently, by the way, just gently take away from that shadow I just added, just so it's a little bit less strong. Over here as well, making sure that the knee has got this shape where you can see that there is a top bit with light and the side bit is also hit with light. And then down here I also want to make sure this is definitely less strong, the shadow, to make it more 3D. At the top, I mean, there's a tiny shadow below the actual collar, which is where we could perhaps just add a tiny shadow, but also I'm going to take a little bit away. That's pretty strong. Generally speaking, I will grab the main color we've got for the skin right now and go way more towards white. And I'll create a new clipping mask layer for this with the same shading brush, hard shading brush or your airbrush. Go in and add this lighter tone. I think I'm nearly at white, I'm not gonna lie, this is a bit too bright. Why? Okay, I thought it was changing all the time. Okay, and then I'm just gonna add that basically on the top part. And I'll add a little bit more yellow tone, and here I'm gonna add this highlight that is sort of on the right side of this leg here. Something like this. And then on the lower leg, really I only want this yellowish tone to be in the middle where it's going to be brightest, and on the outside here to sort of connect them. I will go ahead and just smudge that out with my defined coloring brush, or in your case perhaps a syrup. Smudging out the edges of these highlights a bit. Okay, I think that's pretty decent for the one leg. I know there are two little like indentations, so I'm gonna go ahead, merge my lightest areas and my leg areas together, I think. Yep, I'll merge that down, create a new layer. This doesn't have to be a clipping mask layer, but I just want to add these two shadowy parts that are harder. One and basically two. And then, I don't know, can you see how that shadow below is also a little bit harder here? It has a harder edge towards the bottom, so I'm just gonna blend out the top like this. And yeah, I think that's it. I think I just did that a bit too long, this one, so I'm gonna smudge that down a bit. Maybe just use that other color, that lighter color, to get that down a bit instead of smudging. And oops, because it's not a clipping layer mask, but generally speaking the outline is really harsh because it's so dark. I want to go ahead and make the brightness of the outlines brighter and more saturated. If you didn't see what I just did there, I went on the layer with the overlay, with the outline, go into your adjustments, hue, saturation, brightness, and then you can brighten or saturate things as you like. I might even saturate it even further. And then one other thing I want to do on one of the top leg layers is just go in with a highlighter from the lighter areas of the leg and add that to the side for the bounced light from the environment, and particularly the next leg is going to be reflecting light onto this side of this leg. Maybe not the lightest color here, but definitely a lighter color that you can see is there. I'll also go back to that main leg part and just add the top, which I'll also do after that for the other leg. Perhaps even now, why not? Okay, and in this case here now, I do want to make sure that the background with all the clothes and stuff has got enough of that blue behind it so that nothing else is showing when I erase the outside of this leg. Okay, so I'm just going to go into one of these layers in the back and add the rest of the blue in the background here so that there is no mistake where it continues. Okay, so back on the main leg layer for that back leg, I'm just gonna fill out the shapes to make sure it is right next to the actual outline. And then let's go ahead, duplicate that, merge together, create a new layer above, select clipping layer mask with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush. We want to grab the darker color from the front leg and then choose an even darker color. And I'm gonna go even more towards red because it is a darker reddish warm shadow, and with that I'm just going to mimic the shadow falling on the leg here, and it's even slightly darker towards the bottom one, even more desaturated perhaps. I think that might be maybe too dark, we'll see. And I'm going to add this darker color also towards the top here, making sure to leave an edge here without that really dark color. And I'm also going to go in with the eraser and just make sure I've got at least one highlight line already from the below existing color in here. Make sure to add some sharper outlines or thingy to the shadow up here. And then up here as well, we've got the shadow from the pants, so let's grab a darker color and just get that in there. And since the other top part of the leg is also in this layer, I'm going to go and add the darker color to this too. And where the outline of the legs is concerned on either side, I will merge those two outlines together, I think, and grab the define coloring brush, and with a dark near black I will go ahead and just redraw some of these, because what is this? Here and here. I think to save what I did, really I need to just go in on top with the actual leg layers and do something there. Okay, we've got the two black sort of halters here or something. I don't know what you call these in English. I don't even know what you call these in German. And on either side they go into slightly different directions, so uh-oh, I'm doing that on the outline of the leg. What a surprise! Okay, I'll go ahead on top of the legs and just create another new layer and continue there, and hopefully save my mistake. Here I'm gonna grab the color of the pants, which is slightly lighter than that black. Will give me a better surface to work on with the highlights and whatnot. And then on the other side, making sure that the black part is all done, and then grabbing that pant color again, and also because we're on a new layer now, I will go ahead and just save the legs in the way that I wanted. So basically just color picking the color I've chosen at the edge here and drawing over the edge of the leg outline, Where the highlights are concerned, just make sure that they are still there. Redefining them really. And also the leg outline, just redraw that if it's necessary. Like mine is definitely going to be changed, and I'm also going to draw over the areas where there's blue instead of like the leg outline or whatever, because now I'm on top and I don't need to worry about the other stuff. And here also I want to draw over the edge, make that look a little bit more soft. Grab that highlight, redraw the highlight. Here as well, this is sort of going to go down a bit more. And with the hard shading brush or your hard airbrush, go ahead and just give this here a little bit of a color as well. A bit more soft edge basically for the highlight here by gently drawing over that edge. Nice. And then also I've got a bit of a lighter color here, don't I? And then it goes a bit darker red towards the bottom. Also going to use that and add that on the legs, on the back. With the defined coloring brush or with your syrup, go ahead and just grab your dark again and finish the outline. I do want to get rid of that sketch layer in a minute. I don't want to see it anymore, at least not for the legs. But I guess I need to get those shoes down first. Before any of that is happening, but yeah, happy days. Whew, man, my back is hurting. I am working hard here, guys. Okay, I'm gonna merge the layers together with the halters, with the legs. I think the legs don't need any more clipping layer masks. If you have existing clipping layer masks, make sure to merge those first. Oh my god, we still have a lot to do. Let's go on another new layer on top and add our shoes, starting with a gray, and I nearly was tempted there to color pick, but let's try not to do that. At least I will try not to do that. Basically adding my gray in these different compartments. Then with a lighter gray, I'm going to just add the top part. Trying to follow the shape of the reference with that. But I don't know, I don't think I'm succeeding all the time. And then let's grab the darker color again and go slightly darker and just add the bottom part here. In the reference, it's a little bit more rounded than what I did initially, so I'm just going to follow the reference with that. And also it stops a bit earlier, which is not bad. I'm going to go a bit darker just for these folds here, for these top folds. And also go a bit darker for the first outline. So we've got our first one here, second one comes together from the top. Then we've got this here. And I'm sort of messing it up now, I think, because I can't see anything. I don't know why my brain can't figure out how to do this pattern. Let's try. So we've got some from the top. 1, 2, 3. That's from the top. And then after that, we've got 1, 2, 3. Oops. 3. So this is one big one, basically, I suppose. Then let's grab a lighter color and add our highlights down here. 1, 2, on here 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to grab that darker color and just fill out the rest over here. Making sure to keep it in diamond size shape, basically, or trying to anyways. And also over here. Okay, let's add our outlines at the top. at the back here, they are definitely darker. And over here. And then they're going a bit less dark and more gray. And the leg is definitely sticking in here. So just continuing the shape of the leg here a bit. And I'm just gonna give this here a bit of a shadow as well. Then going back to the dark, I'm just gonna add the little folds that are down at the bottom part. Gray, I wanna go and add the sock first. And over here too. And then let's go into an aubergine black. So we've got the edge of the shoe down here. I'm just gonna add that in one color right now, and then it goes a bit wider towards the front and around. We go a little bit lighter towards the top here. Lighter again. A bit darker maybe towards the bottom part here. And then I'll use a lighter shade just for that edge here first, that highlight. And a darker black for the separation. Since this tutorial's already gone for quite a long time, I think it would be great for us to focus on a couple of elements that we can replicate quickly. And yeah, so I'm not going to continue with the shoes for a minute, but I'm going to start on these golden ornaments on the jacket because I feel like there are quite a lot missing. I know I've got this one here, but I think it would be good to just start over here. So I'm just going to erase this guy by adding that blue on top, and then I'm going to create a new layer, and here with a, let's go with a black first. I want to outline where I would have my like buttons, and I've got one in here, but that's already sort of semi there. In these buttons, I want to grab a base color. In that case, for the rest of the gold, I've sort of been using this here. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this here first and fill those out, followed by a much lighter sort of edge. I'm going to paint these little hoops and then top it off with a lighter area on the top each, and then also on the edge they're gleaming a lot more. And then finally a lighter highlight here, and give these an edge here too, even slightly lighter. That's still dark against the actual light part that we added first. I want to add a darker bottom part and then a sort of circle. Then I'll grab a much brighter and a little bit more towards the yellow hue color, just a tiny bit, because yellow will be brighter than orange, generally speaking. Okay, and then also on the edge of this outer pin thingy, I'll grab an even lighter color like white or near white and just add a couple of touches of highlight to these top parts and slightly darker but still bright to these buttons. Okay, I want to grab a dark color and basically have a bit of string come along here. Sorry, and then add my ribbon below the hair here, and we've got a sun, which I'm just going to sketch in with this dark blue, and then I'll add my ribbon on the other side. Let's grab a medium blue for the ribbon base, actually a bit lighter I think, to stand out a bit. Even lighter, to be honest. I don't know why, but I chose quite a dark color here for some reason. And then I'll go and add a hoop for the bottom part here on both sides because we're looking at it from below. This side needs a bit of a darker edge. And then I'll grab a more saturated but slightly darker blue than the actual ribbon color and add my shadows. And I'll add a darker shadow for beneath where the ribbon opens. And then I'll add a brighter section into this part as well. For the star, I'll grab a bright color first and just fill in my shape. Once the shape has been filled in, I want to go ahead with a darker color, a little bit more orange and quite like desaturated, sort of in the middle here. And with this, I want to add the halves of the star paint, like, what are they called? Oh my goodness. These star thingies, just the half of each of these tiny ones I'm going to color in with this. And then I'm going to add a circle, hopefully it'll work, with a brighter color that's much more white. I also want to add some highlight on the parts that are already bright. I want to grab a much darker and reddish tone for the actual shadow, especially on the bottom side here of this circle and around the star. And also in between some of these star arms, I'm just going to call them. And in between those sometimes. And then for the middle section here, I'm going to add another little circle, and here I want to grab a very saturated blue. I'm going to add a much darker but very saturated blue here for the top, and then a very, very saturated bright blue for this little part in here. And grabbing a dark blue, I'm going to give this another sort of edge. And although the star isn't perfect, I feel like that looks quite alright. Just correcting a couple of little areas. Nice, and this also has a teardrop, and for that I'm also going to add a black spot first, or a very dark one, and then the teardrop. That is sort of quite big. Then I'll follow up with my more saturated medium orange. And I'll follow that up with a much lighter, a little bit more yellow toned, brighter part here. I want to go a bit more saturated, to be honest. Go a little bit more saturated and darker for the bottom here. And I'll grab a much lighter one for the little dot here. And also using this brighter one to add a bit of highlight. Okay, so that is going to be brightened up with one of the next layers of add that I'm going to use. There are also two little white areas or lighter parts to this that I've sort of forgotten. So I'm just going to add those in here too. Tones here of orange, I'm going to be drawing the base of this shape. It's a teardrop, so it'll be thicker at towards us, and wherever you have, not painted correctly, you can just draw over it with the actual color of the ribbons here behind it. I'm just going to use the darker color blue that I should have used for this top part. I want to give it a really dark outline. I'm going to grab a light yellow white for that. This is the part that is facing basically the sky. And then on the edge you've got that brown where basically the sky or the color, the light doesn't really reach, so it's going to be a bit darker. So I'm grabbing this very saturated brown. And I also want to make sure I grab a slightly desaturated brown to follow up with this. And I want to grab a dark black to sort of give it that shape as if it's sort of like thick and, you know, it's cut off because we can't see past a certain point. Something like this where the brown line basically vanishes. Now it looks like it's sort of flat and 3D a little bit more. We've got a really light turquoise in here again. Make sure not to draw fully to the edges because then you save yourself some work in a minute. Followed by saturated blues. And again into the other direction we've got the turquoise. I'm going to be using the smudge tool here to just sort of get these to unify easily. And then with a darker blue, I want to just get these edges here refined. And also we want to grab a dark brown and just give these yellow parts some brown edges. To show that they are made of that metal, I want to grab a lighter orange for the top part here. And a dark orange or brown to give this a sort of cut off point here. That one. And with a lighter orange, I'm just going to grab that highlight, pop that there. This here needs to be a bit bigger, doesn't it? Got some ornaments on the other side as well. First, grabbing a dark brown, blue. Here, it's just behind this, sort of just towards the shoulder edge. Obviously, mine is going to have to differ a bit from the actual reference because my shapes aren't quite right. With a lighter orange, I want to now add my metal, leaving a sort of teardrop shape in the middle. With a light color, I want to add my highlight rims, especially on the right side. And then we want to grab a darker shade brown and give especially the right side, the left side, some shading, some desaturated lighter shading towards the top part there on the right, on the left, and some even lighter, more yellow highlight on the right. Grab a dark brown and give all of that an outline on the outside and on the inside. And then let's grab a light blue and add an even lighter blue that's a bit more towards the greens. Grab that dark blue again and make sure your outlines are all nice and even. Easy peasy. And now let's grab this dark brown. I'm just color painting this and redrawing the edge here. And then I'll grab one of those medium browns and connect here. Trying to get it symmetrical, more or less. Okay, that is okay for now, I think. And then we've got a brown part here. I'm just going to add this brown first, followed by a lighter orange, giving it a dark outline as always. Dive right in. I'm going to grab this dark color here and basically add a teardrop. Dark brown. I want to add my metal, actually make that a bit lighter. Add outline again and just fix it towards the edges of the ball and outside. Grab a lighter but a bit more reddish tone for my highlight here. Grab a slightly darker one just for the edges here and intermittently adding a bit of this dark brown. with red tint. Grab a lighter color towards the brighter oranges, towards the yellow but not yellow yet, because that's quite a strong highlight. Okay, and also I think we need to add a bit of a medium brown over here on the edge, maybe a bit more red, so it actually fits. With a slightly darker red as well, I just want to add a bit more darkness over here. Okay, that is the quick version for this one. Now we can go ahead in theory and just basically freehand lasso tool this and press copy paste. This will be on a new layer now, and you can just go ahead and, I don't usually do this, but because time is running out, we need to get a move on. So I'm just gonna merge down and copy paste again for the other side. I'll move it with the green part here, so I don't have to move it too much, but just a bit. And here too. Basically want to make sure that this chain goes sort of in here. So I'm going to continue. We've got one here, one long one short one, long one, the dark color around. I'm going to give this a nice outside. Grab a dark blue and make sure that this jacket is nice and outlined as well. Oops. And also the folds of the tunic below are a bit darker. Then we've got our teardrop, as I've already sort of indicated here, with some sort of, with like a medium brown red. I'm going to grab an extra pendant here and just add another stone, teardrop shaped, and making sure that the top parts are a little bit tapered off, and then grab a dark color, ideally brown or, well, yeah, brown or blue. Make sure the rest is tidied. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be bigger. So yeah, let's go ahead and increase the size real quick. Good thing I haven't really painted much more yet. And then I'll grab the dark color again. Make sure that this is all nicely surrounded by outline. For the inside, I'll grab a dark blue and then also give the outline first, followed by the lightest color, which is a turquoise, really bright. Actually, we can even give it a white streak in here too, followed by a slightly darker blue in a different hue, another hue change, and a little bit darker but still really saturated. In fact, I might go even darker and very saturated here, a little bit more saturated like that. Grab that also in a bit darker and give this another edge. And then with like that light color we had earlier, we'll give another highlight into the stone here. Nice. And then for the actual gold, let's add a lighter, more towards a warmer orange, and we'll add that here and on the edge down here. I really don't know. I mean, I know that, sometimes I really wonder if this is an AI reference again, because some things don't seem very consistent. When you see this line here, for example, it does make me wonder, because it doesn't seem to follow through, but then obviously the picture is pixelated, so who knows. Let's grab an even lighter color and give this a final highlight on the edges here, and also on this pendant part. Grab a darker orange for some extra warmth to this highlight. And for this edge here as well of the highlight, below these lighter parts. And then on these beads as well, we want to grab a much brighter orange and add a little bit of highlight to each of them, followed by a really strong reddish color. And add that sort of to the edge of your beads, but just before the outline basically. So it's sort of just here adding that color into it. Whoops. just here and here. Nice. And do we need that also on the others? I think so. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some dark red. Okay, we've got this part, the pendant. It's not sitting in the center, so I might just go ahead and freehand lasso tool this one basically as close as possible and then move it towards the left, but not too much. And moving it with the green thing will make it pixelated, so none of that. Okay, so that's looking good. I think it would be good to go ahead and create a new layer just for safekeeping, and then we're going to go with these nice designs. So I've color picked the main color here, and then with a darker color we want to go ahead and basically try on the first try to get it right. Yup. Good thing we're on a new layer anyways. This here is like a little bit more teardroppy, so I'll go ahead and try that again. Then that's connected to this. Over here. And let's also just erase that middle part and whoops. Let's change the color again, great. There are two triangles here, and then the others are sort of connected. Like that. And again, the triangle is not connected over here. It's a good color also to add an edge to this jacket part, and also this line goes up quite far, I think. Okay, then let's go ahead and do that on the other side with a darker color again, and this time we're working in a bit of a different dimension. Actually, I want to just go ahead and make sure this here is nice and straight. Grab a darker color again. We've got that triangle first, and another triangle, and another triangle to the edge here. Then there is a big circle coming up here. Something like that. This one was a little bit easier for some reason. Nice, okay. I think that's right for a minute. On here. It's not perfect by any means, but this is supposed to be showing you how to do it, and I think this does hopefully give some indication. Oh, I forgot one line here. On that note, grab your shadow color and also add some to these ornaments. Here I'm going to grab a lighter color to follow this up, what I've just painted in, with a darker outline. Mainly to just get the form in. Down there is obviously way darker, but I'm going to go just a bit more grey in this case and darker, so it's not just black. And then here too, a couple of folds of the clothing, and down here is a dark finger. Now the shadow part here. Shadows here. For the lighter part, I'm going to color pick what I've got and go more into grey and lighter. Maybe more into this blue actually, and a bit more saturated. Slightly darker and down back to the more marine blue, I think. I'm a bit happy with this anyways. And then I'll grab a slightly darker color, a bit more towards the darker blues. Something like that. Give all of that a nice dark outline. And also there is a clothing line, over here. Now for the edge of this part, I'm also going to give this a black outline. Which means we could hide the sketch for this part, but I will add the scepter as well on a new layer with a dark red outline, I think. Basically drawing in a Squidward shape a bit. And then this sort of comes to these little tri thingy at the bottom. Two things sticking out here. We have got a gem in the middle. I'll use a blue for that as outline. Let's grab a light blue to just give this some color. And more turquoise towards the bottom. Use the smudge tool to just quickly smooth it out, or blend it together rather. For the outside, this is sort of a light blue-gray here. Fill in your shapes. I'll erase some outer lines that are a bit too thick. Then we've got a blue crystal on the top with bright turquoise outline. A slightly darker blue inside. This sort of extends down to the other crystal. I'll grab a brighter turquoise just for the outline here. We've got two little diamonds with brown outline here. 1 and 2. Let's grab a medium yellow orange. And then with a lighter, more yellow highlight, even brighter and even more yellow. Actually go a bit more saturated, a bit warmer. Add your highlights or the top parts here. Add an edge. And a lighter color. Building up sort of the values. Then a darker color a bit more brown than the one we used before here. Okay, for this diamond we need, whoops, a bright turquoise again, and we'll draw down one line, I guess. I will draw down two. I don't know, this makes me question the whole thing again, because why wouldn't a person add another line? I'll grab a dark blue, and this time I want to just get these outlines in and just make sure the shape is nicely filled out. Redo some of your shapes if you need to, like I do. A little bit darker and more purple for the shadow. Also, I think the outline here is too dark, so I'll go into this desaturated brown and add that on top. Maybe a bit lighter. We'll see in the end. I'll grab a dark one over here anyways for now. Fill out the shape. Add a white line. And also I think we can go a bit lighter on the top here for these guys. Make sure that your shape is put together here. Add a turquoise bright boundary. We might have to add that turquoise in here with one of the blending mode layers, to be honest. We've got a little gem here too, give it a darker outline and a brighter inside. Okay, and now for the golden parts in here. We have got a dark brown that we're going to basically draw a couple of hoops over here with arches, and then over each side, thicker and wider. And sort of coming together here with another circle from below. With a dark blue, this part gets a surrounding outline. I'm going to have to move my top part of the scepter so it sits a little bit more on top of the actual thing, like this. And then I'll grab a light blue, or rather dark blue for the shadows on either side. And then the light blue, or slightly whiter than that we used at the top there to color the rest. There is a more purple shadow beneath the fingers here. And then after that, actually, the staff goes white. With the blue outline again, following through on the shape. And with a darker grey again, I want to add an area of shadow, maybe a bit lighter down here, and also the same for the top here, and on the sides. Then with that brown, I want to just add my outlines here. And here we've got a little circle with 3 little circles on top, balls. And here we've got another crystal. We've got a structure of gold that I'm going to add in here first, basically holding the crystal. I'll add a darker turquoise outline for that. Circles here, I'll grab that lighter color again. With a darker and slightly more reddish color, I want to add shadows. And then with a lighter, more orange yellow color, I want to add the light on here. And much lighter for the highlight. A medium color for this part here. Just to fill in these metal parts. Okay, I'll go back to the outlines, basically following the reference for this, because I have no idea what this is supposed to be. I think there's actually like a circle in here, like a bowl, and then they're just like crystals on the outside instead of actual one big crystal. With a lighter color, a bit more towards yellow, I'm going to start introducing the highlights on these areas. With a light near white, we're going to add them as well. A darker reddish color for the, maybe even darker and more saturated for the edges below these balls. And then I'm just going to connect these guys and add a little bit of a reddish outline down here. With a lighter orange, reddish grey, I'm going to add the bottom part here. A little bit more saturated, more towards yellow in the areas that are warmer. A bit more desaturated and darker again for the areas that are less warm and less hit by light. Down here I'm going to grab a darker color again for the outlines. And then slightly lighter but still quite dark edges for the shadows. And some highlights naturally. Then some darker shadows down here as well, maybe not quite that dark, but definitely darker. And slightly lighter for the preparation for the highlights here. Also a bit more yellowish in tone. And even whiter. Slightly more saturated for the edges here. Turquoise for the bowl. In here. And in this part here too. Although this side of the bowl is a bit more darker in blue. And also with that turquoise, we want to add this shape into this part here, which is another teardrop in a teardrop basically. Then for these stones, we've got a darker blue in these parts, closer to the middle, and lighter to the outer parts. Phew, it feels like a marathon. With a dark blue, I want to add shadows in between these guys here. To be honest, they could be black. And then going down from here, we basically follow with the staff towards the feet. Although I fear I've gone wobbly again. So in that case, I want to grab the part of I'm going to grab this part here and just move it, which will blur it unfortunately a bit. And I'll grab this part here below, move it as well. And then with the dark blue, we want to continue our scepter downwards. And then there's a sort of bulb again with a light blue color. I'm just going to steal the grey from the shoe part and fill this in. So we've got a base to work with. In fact, I'm going to create a clipping layer mask to this and make it all dark blue. Whoops, just the scepter part, followed by this blue, followed by turquoise, and white. Without merging together, you can grab any brush and basically fill in with any color the gaps that you haven't painted in yet earlier. The clipping layer mask will automatically color it for you basically. Then we've got a white part down here as well, to either side. This one's actually quite angled, you can really see that. I'm going to merge that down now, the clipping layer mask, so I can continue using other colors, and with a slightly darker color I want to add the rest of the shape. Basically just adding a flat shape first. For the shape itself, and then I'll create a darker outline around, and this time following more of the details, although it's not going to be perfect as you can see. We've got a lighter side on one edge, and basically this is the highlight part where the parts are reflected. The light is reflected off these parts basically. There are two areas of holes here. I'm basically gonna erase the middle part of this. Then with this lighter part, I'm just gonna continue with the highlights. And then also perhaps some slightly cooler blue that is here in the shadow. Same for the bottom part here, which I'm going to smudge out the top part of. Also I'm going to use a blending, the hard shading brush for me, and perhaps the hard blending, the hard airbrush for you, to blend this in smoothly. Grabbing that lighter part again, I'm just going to add the rest of the shape. And the darker outline. Nice. Alright, and now we've got the decoration of this pole. In particular, we've also got the actual highlights and stuff, and obviously, yeah. Well, I'm going to hide the sketch layer first, because I feel like that's interfering a bit. And then on a new layer, I'm going to basically add an outline with a darker blue, trying to just go down in one motion. Perhaps these guys would be better served if we did straight ones. So basically if you pull down and hold, it should straighten itself out automatically. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Just down to that bulb basically. I'll go down to the layer, well, I'll create a new layer below that and basically fill out the rest of the shape. Using the smudge tool, either the defined coloring brush or the studio pen, or rather the syrup, to make sure this is all smoother. And I'll also duplicate my layer and merge that down. With the hard shading brush again, we can create a new clipping mask layer and just go back over the areas, to be honest, for a bit of an easier way. Alright, and then I want to make sure to grab create a clipping layer mask to the outline and basically give this a lighter blue tint to it. That's definitely better, and also up here I do want to make sure that these edges are all relatively similar. Not over here though. Okay, I'm happy with that, and I will just go ahead and basically merge that down. Same with the outline, and also I'm going to create a new clipping layer mask to the base of this to add the shapes. Basically set this to overlay mode. You'll see an O here when that's ready, and with just color pick a medium blue, perhaps slightly darker, and add some shapes. Even darker down here. With the eraser, you can go in and take out a couple of little dots. And then down here also a couple of darker ones. Alright, I think that looks good, so I'm going to merge that down. I'll create a new clipping mask layer and add a light edge. Also set it to overlay mode and a bright turquoise, and just add an edge to this and a couple of dots. I think there is another pattern up there I'm missing, so I'm just going to create a new normal layer once I've merged that down, and with I'm using this color over here. I'm going to add that perhaps a bit lighter and a bit more cooler in tone, adding a square, like a diamond first, and then sort of tapering it out to another diamond. And one more time. I'm going to duplicate that layer to get it all nice and even, and erase the areas that are a bit over the edge. Then I will go ahead and basically create a clipping mask layer to that shape and add a strong bright turquoise with my hard shading brush or your hard airbrush to the bottom part. merge that down, duplicate your shape, set the lower one in your saturation adjustment, the brightness down quite a bit. Doesn't matter too much as long as it's black after. Okay, it's not quite black. Like that is fine. We basically want to have it stick out a little bit, so you move it slightly, not too much, to either side. That's fine. I'll merge that down now. On the top part, I want to grab a darker color and add another, triangle, diamond, with a turquoise center. Let's add a slight highlight to the shape. Okay, I can't see anything beyond that, so I don't actually know what's happening, but up here we need to add another diamond. Unfortunately, it's pixelated now that I've changed the shape earlier. It is what it is. Just gonna adjust the edges here a bit. Grab your dark blue and make it a bit darker for in here. Oops, I think that was supposed to be something. I'll grab a darker outline. And a lighter highlight, lighter on these areas. And we've got like a slightly lighter, but not too much highlight on this one. Maybe slightly lighter, so it's visible. I'll grab a darker outline and just give this here a little bit of a stronger feature. And up here, I think I need to fix this part. Didn't even notice. Slightly darker features around this one, but not as dark as the others were. Something like that. Going a bit darker towards the end. And I'll erase a little bit here. Something like that. I think we just need a little bit more highlight on these guys. 1 and 2. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that for this part. I don't know about this one. This is really thick. So I'm just going to take away some of this thickness and darkness. I didn't even notice this earlier, to be honest. And I haven't added the gold here yet either, so let's go ahead and do that with a medium orange, more towards yellow, maybe like that. I want to fill in these shapes. And then adding some extra shapes over here that I'm missing. Don't really know what they are. I'll give them an outline. Oops, not quite that far down. I'll give them an outline with a slightly darker color. And also use that to just separate some of these guys. Draw sharper boundaries. And over here. Now for some of the highlights, I want to grab a lighter, more yellow color and just add that to the top edges mainly, or a single edge. I'll go a little bit more orange and just add that to these lower ones, grabbing a darker color just to separate some of these guys again. Grab that lighter orange, whoops, and add that too. A bit more yellow and a bit more light and less strong in color. I'll grab a white and here too. Slightly less white and more yellow for the edge here. And I'll add a second one up here where there was supposed to be one I missed with an outline. And here too. And a slightly lighter orange. And over here we'll add that lighter orange as well. We've also got some gold that I forgot down here, so I'm just going to add an outline first. And then grab a medium orange and fill these shapes out. Grab a lighter color that's more yellow, give them a highlight. Grab a light blue and add a little diamond with a slightly darker edge. And then just make sure everything is connected. And just got a dark outline. I forgot to add the finger in here. Okay, I think for the actual thingy here, that's fine for a minute. All of that seems to be alright. It's not perfect, but it's okay. I'm gonna move on with the main things that are missing, namely this here, for example. We've got also a medium. Let's go a little bit more here, desaturated and a bit more reddish. We've got a darker shade immediately. Just go a bit darker here. Grab that lighter color again. Whoops. And add a point. a slightly darker color and add the next point on the other side, and then an even darker color for the edge over there that is in the shadow. Everything has got an outline as always, so I'm going to go in with a dark color and just give this all quickly an outline. Here there's also a slight protrusion. Oh no, this is another part that looks a little bit like... Are you sure this isn't AI? Oh my god. Here, the fact that there is one missing on the edge. I mean, I know that there's a lot of witch hunt going around and all that. I don't mean to add to it, but I can't help but think critically these days when I see something that is supposed to be an artwork. Anyways, I'm using a lighter color to just fill in this part here. I wonder. And a slightly darker color again for the other side. I'm just gonna color this half and half. Trying to get these guys symmetrical. Like that. And then there is also a bit of a pattern in here. Also a slightly darker outline here. And then let's grab a lighter color and give all of this a bit of a highlight. Up there, over here. And in a darker color on the other side. Hi. Yeah, strange going on with this reference. I know there's a different perspective in here obviously, but still. I think this is about as far as I'll take this color, like this in the normal mode. I'm going to go ahead and find the layer where I've actually added these colors, and with a smudge tool, go in and smudge these guys out. I quite like this painterly smudge look. And then over here we do want to grab a darker color, slightly desaturated, even darker, and add this here to the edge. Luckily this is on another layer, so we can just go ahead and fill this out without too much worry. I'll grab a lighter color as well for the edge here, and slightly darker for the top part. Although in this case I'll have to go on the other layer. Okay, nice. This is still bugging me, I'm just going to correct this. Making sure that the highlight looks a little bit more natural. And the fold. Needs to be a bit lighter, I think, or is rather more saturated over here. Okay, and then along the clothing fold there is also a highlight. and on the fold here, but I'm going to smudge that out. And I'm also going to smudge out this, oh my goodness, folded line. There we go. I like this color here. I'm going to use that to add a bit more to the edge here, and then also grab a slightly darker color for the rest down here. Nice. Time for the pants with a dark black, adding the outline. There is a sort of pocket here, I guess, and a couple of slightly lighter marks, maybe not quite that light. With a darker color again, going in and pushing that over, following the shape. And in here there's also a little bit of light showing. We've got a little bit of a shadow hanging over. That's not quite as dark as black. And then not quite as dark. And also the shadow is not quite as dark. There's a fold here, and one seam, I think, or something over here. There is a shadow coming down, a bit lighter. And also two that are sort of coming out here, but they are not quite so dark, so I'm just going to use a smudge tool to smudge them out. Then there's also another shadow on the side here, slightly darker. And we've got a highlight on the rim here. And on these seams, oops. And then there is supposed to be one on this side too, I see. Oh, this has gotta be, you gotta be kidding me. That's gotta be AI. You can't tell me different. I mean, why is this here placed over here when that's over there? Oh man, well, tell me if I'm wrong. Please let me be wrong. I mean, I hope Hoyo doesn't use AI. That would be a real crusher. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I'll use a slightly lighter color in here. And again, that highlight. Oh, imagine if they used AI, that would be... Oh man. That would be awful. We have got a nice pattern here. Maybe that's just a design choice. Maybe the artist was like, yeah, nah, I'll just place it somewhere else. I don't know. I'm adding these highlights to these edges too, but they need to be a bit lighter. Even lighter. 1 and 2. And on the other side as well. Every highlight gets another outline. I'll grab a slightly lighter color as well for these parts here. And another slightly more orangey highlight. Also smudged out a bit. Make sure it's got a nice black outline here. And then also want to add a little bit of that orange brown here. we've got this ornament in a sort of triangular shape with a light reflection here with darker breaks and outline, of course. And here I'm gonna go and add my first bit of metal in a bit more of a reddish tone, or reddish. Grab a slightly darker tone, and then for the gem we're gonna start light again, then have a darker middle and light at the top again. More saturated middle maybe. And there's definitely some purple in here too. I'll grab a lighter metal color now, slightly desaturated and red, and darker and more orange over here, and then a nice dark outline. Something like that. I want to just make all of this a bit lighter, this triangle thing, and then also make sure I've got all the right outlines. We've got a nice white light on the edge. Grab a more saturated red, maybe more brown for the top. This guy has also got a darker outline in blue. This here is also shaded a bit more, so I'm just going to go in with a darker color on top. But this one's also a great candidate for some blending mode layers in a minute. This guy needs some stronger outline. Okay, nice. I feel like this leg definitely needs that stronger outline as well. Nice. Okay, not too much more. I'm going to enable that sketch again so we can finish the shoes, and also I think there's a flap missing over here, so I'm just going to add that first with the light blue from up there, or maybe just like this, quite light, not quite as big as I've sketched it out to be, I think. Filling the shape out. Duplicating that shape. I'll basically give this a dark navy edge. To the whole thing. And then it needs some highlights, so we've got like a lighter area going through here. I know it's sort of a different blue color than I've chosen, but right now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just looking to finish. I'm about 6 hours into this and tired. Tired is the only word. And I'll go in with a darker blue on the edge here, which will definitely need a nice rounding. Something like that. This has also got a darker blue. Like this. And a darker blue again for the rest of the shadow. I'm going to add a slightly lighter, color in there, if I can find the right layer. This is quite light, something more like that. I'll smudge those together. Okay. What else is missing? There is one that's supposed to be down there. This that is more grey. Adding a slightly lighter edge to it. In this case, I'm just going to grab a darker blue and make sure this has got... Oh, I need to go on a layer on the very top because I don't know which layer I can move on now before I tidy up. Just going to give this a bit of a shadow. And now time for the dark. Let's go with a medium, more desaturated orange for this part. Basically looking to add these color parts and the final hand. Using a darker color as an outline again, and here too. For this smaller one, I'm just going to cover this all in this color, and I want to make sure that I'm going to use a darker blue to basically add these like keyhole type patterns. And then up here we've got these flowery cuffs. Which I'm just going to color all blue. And I'll go a bit darker for the blue behind that. And I'll give this an outline as well, and I'm going to duplicate this layer to avoid painting everything twice, but I'm also going to give this flowery cuff an outline first with this color. Nice. So in this case now I want to just go ahead and add a light desaturated reddish color for this part. Not quite light enough, I think. Slightly darker for the one in the back here, which I didn't give an outline either, funny enough. I will give this a dark orange brown outline to fit in with his others. I'm going to start adding the shapes for the patterns. A slightly lighter color that's still darker than the rest is going to be the shadow here, and even darker going towards the edge here, more noticeably so. Let's color in this area first with this main color. Again, I'm just going to duplicate this here in a moment. Now, time to add some darker colors. We've got a darker reddish shadow here. a more reddish, darker tone generally. I'll grab a slightly lighter blue for this area here. And also, I'm just quickly going to add a bit more shadow over here. Can't resist. And the highlight. Alright, and one more shadow. Okay, let's add the hand as well. We've got a pink dark shadow, it's quite red. And here, too dark, slightly lighter, a little bit more pinkish maybe. And a second color that's definitely darker. And then with a dark outline that goes into blue with the glove. I'm going to add this now. Basically, I realized that my pinky here, or the finger, is a bit in the wrong position, so I'm going to change that. And then that's done. Something like that. No expert in fingers and hands, but this seems okay. Basically going to be adding our lighter flesh tones that are a bit more orange as well on the top here. One for each sort of side of the palm. And really we want to just basically attach this straight away to our darker part here of the color. Something like that. We can make that smudge out a bit. Okay, maybe we'll have to merge that down first for the rest. In terms of the hand, I think that's okay. This finger needs to come forward a bit more. And then basically we've got two tones. We've got a light blue for the darker parts, that is more like this, which I'm going to be adding first. First, the shadows on all the different sides you can see straight away. Maybe it makes sense to just add this overall first, to be honest. Okay, let's just color in the entire hand. Okay, let's grab a darker color for the outlines of the pattern. Basically, you've got one coming through here, which is sort of a double line, and then here across. And also on this finger. And this also blends into a darker sort of bit of shadow here. Okay, let's just do that and then think about the shape when we've added our lighter parts to this. So for our lighter parts, I want to grab a more light blue first of all, and then here just add that wherever we see the light. I'm also going to go ahead and duplicate that in a minute. And smudging in some areas so that is a softer bit of highlight or shadow. Okay, let's go ahead and just duplicate that. I feel like that looks really weird. Is it just me? It does look weird. Okay, let's grab the lasso tool. Definitely the thumb is too long. I'm going to move that down a bit. And also it does come out a bit more up here before it goes down. So basically grabbing a darker color and making this a bit more up here, I guess. Just raising it. And making sure that this medium light color is sort of highlighting most of that. Oops. Falling off here. Darker color highlighting the edge of this finger. This is a glove after all as well. I have to remember that it's not actually exactly the finger. Well, I can draw them any better, to be honest. I can't, but maybe that's why it is feeling strange. No, it's definitely me. I'm the problem. Okay, I'll grab... I definitely need to make sure that this finger is a little bit more bent. And then with a darker color again, just getting these outlines in. This here also needs to be bent a little bit more, this finger. Sometimes you think these tiny details don't matter, but they do, let me tell you. I guess that looks better, and still the palm feels too big. I'm gonna grab this section here and just bring it a bit closer. And definitely move it up like that. Wow. Yeah, I feel like that it makes a big difference. Not that it solved everything, but I also feel like this finger here doesn't show as much. And maybe if we make this here a little bit wider. It's definitely a bit better, but yeah. This hand is not the masterpiece. When I stick to these things, I generally tend to make it happen at some point, but this tutorial is already quite long, so I think I might move on and finish this here after I stop filming and just show you. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. Some people don't like that. I get it. You've invested some time in here too now. Not just me. a slightly lighter color and hopefully bring these two colors a bit more together that feel a little bit too separate. The dark and the white here, the dark and the light. Ah, there's another bit of blue that's a bit darker up here. Okay. What do we think? These dark lines might be a bit too dark. So I've grabbed a slightly lighter one. Okay, I think that's alright. I think that looks fine. It looks better than it did in any case, and that's a big plus already. Okay, yeah, that'll do. That's fine. Let's finish these ornaments and then add our eyes and our final light, which is always the best part. I'm gonna just grab the darker color here and basically add the pattern. We can add that lighter color in on the edge here again. And generally add a slightly lighter reddish tone. Actually, that's not accurate at all. Definitely needs to be a darker reddish tone. For the edge of these keyholes, we want a slightly darker tone that definitely sticks out a bit. And for the bottom part too. Let's give our details here a bit of a highlight and smudge that out gently. And then here we've got these two coming together. Okay, now we just want to add a little bit more of a lighter edge here and a slightly darker but more saturated edge here, and then a dark blue in here with a bit of an outline, and that'll do outlines down here too and here. We've got a lighter edge coming down here that's actually a lot whiter in the reference, and slightly darker but also light just on this edge here then. And this actually is a better, well, slightly lighter than that, but definitely not as bright as the other one was, I think. Okay, overall I think that's fine. Definitely the patience is running out now, so I'm gonna have to call it a day. In a moment I'm gonna hide that. Oh, we still have the shoes, don't we? Yeah, no running away from those. I'm gonna grab a slightly more saturated purple for the top here. we've got a nice golden ornament here in the middle. Make sure it's got a nice black outline. And then on either side we've got these blue butterfly, whatever they're called. Giving them a nice sharp outline. And then it's got a bit of an ornament in the middle here with a square, dark outline for the square, and a blue stone in the middle, dark blue, light blue, outline. For these bows, we want to grab a slightly lighter color and just add that on the outside. And then a slightly darker blue on the inside here. This is where the smudging tool will be perfect. So gently smudging this. Let's grab a lighter orange for some highlights. And of course the brightest highlights are on either side and the top. Let's cover the shoe with the rest of the orange, aubergine, purple. Duplicate, merge down, duplicate again. Okay, that's fine. And then, why does that always happen? And then we just want to go ahead with a dark outline. I'm going to use the outside color to sort of just shape this with the eraser because, yep, time is of the essence. And I need to get this a little bit slimmer. I'm going to add a highlight up here. And then a black line following that. Making sure this part is also quite dark. A slightly lighter part over here. And then it goes dark again. And it has quite a dark top part to it. The shadow. There's also a shadow in the front here before a small highlight. And again, this is quite a thick rim, which I'm going to thin down by just adding the outside color real quick. Okay, so for the top, we've got a lighter purple here. That's quite light, so I'm going to go a bit darker. And also we've got a light highlight on the front here. The right side looks a little bit more desaturated purple. The other side actually looks a bit more blue. So I'm just going to go in and add a bit more saturation to that as well with the blue. And then in the purple I'll grab a light color and give this a shine. Use your blending mode smudge tool to just sort of smudge this out, not too much. And then down here, we need some more gray. We have got a bit more of a sock showing in the actual reference, which also is quite gray in the shadow, quite dark. I'll grab a darker black for the edge here, for the end of the shoe. And even though I don't really like this part too much, with a bit of outline, I think we're pretty much looking good. And then the other side, let's add an outline first. I'm just going to go with the one I drew with a slightly lighter color. I'm going to come in from below on a new layer. And also I'm going to color in the edges of how far I'm going to go down with this. Going back to the top, I'm going to merge those together, duplicate, merge together. And here I'm going to go in with a darker color again and just get these shapes in. So basically I think what we said was everything goes down in a triangle, basically touching the bottom. And then everything from the bottom is coming up in a triangle. Making sure all the shapes are filled out. With the same color, I'm going to go in and add my sock. With a darker color, I'm going to add the outline of my shoe now. These are actually blue, so let's go ahead and color these in dark blue. With a desaturated brown, I'm indicating some metal. Adding a darker outline to this, and also want to add a bit of a more flary type bit up here. We've got a black, near black, dark color here. And then we've got our bow pretty much straight away there. For that I'm just going to add the outlines first. Following sort of the reference here. And then I'm just going to add in the rest of my shoe before continuing. We've got a darker edge in here, and then a slightly lighter, different kind of blue in here, or is it brown? It looks a bit more brown to be honest, but that is okay now, that's fine. Just for the heel, I'm going to add this sort of blue. With a darker color, I want to make sure that this has got an outline. Of course, in my hour of need, it changes the color. Thanks. Okay, a black outline for the top here. And then a more purplish color for the actual shoe. That's a bit better, I think. Definitely need to duplicate this one as well. Yep, that's a little bit stronger, isn't it? I'm gonna go in with a slightly more purple color that is a bit lighter for the sock part to correct this. And then for the shoe, we've got a slightly lighter, more desaturated color for the highlight. Coming down, basically all the side. I'm going to smudge out the parts that aren't particularly defined. And then we've got a slightly darker purple at the front here. We've got a lighter purple shadow highlight on the edge here. I'm not sure, but there is a shadow in here for some reason. This here, grabbing a darker color again, I'm just going to give this here a shadow. This here needs a slightly darker edge. Has a slight highlight on the side. Very slight. And the rest is dark with extra shadow in some areas. Slightly lighter here. Alright, and I think that's okay. Let's just duplicate that. Okay, don't know if that made any difference. I'm gonna erase a little bit of this here and basically just finish the top part here with the highlight color from the other side. And a slightly darker color for, well, not that dark, I guess, for the parts that are in the sun or in the light. I'll grab a darker color and sort of just add these round parts. Nice. Okay, let's hide the sketch. Okay, I obviously want to just adjust a couple of things here. Mostly just make this here a bit smaller. And then I want to grab a darker color and just give this here a border again. The bow is the same color as the other one, so I'm going to grab that color. Adding a golden metal edge here with a highlight, less highlight this time. Nice edge in it though, nice outline. Want to grab more outline for these guys. Okay, and then we'll grab a darker color for the inside. And smudge that out a bit. Okay. I'd like to add a little bit more of an outline just here, and also grabbing a darker color, adding the detail that's missing in here. And then we've also got this bow at the back that's also blue. Let's see if I can finish this before the battery runs out. Giving this an outline, bit of a blue inside, outline, and it's got like a nice ornamental thing as well, like that. Dark outline, lighter color, blue stone, dark turquoise, dark outline. So just for the final stuff, I wanted to add a little bit of detailing to this area with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush. Grab a slightly darker color to the one that's already there. I've added a clipping layer mask to all my merged down layers, and then I just go ahead and add that to the edge. This is quite dark. You can go ahead and make that a bit more saturated and maybe slightly lighter. Then we want to go down in the smudge tool with the same brush that you're using. Go ahead and smudge that out in the direction of your shadows. Now a quick trick too, just getting everything else erased that you didn't want to have painted. I just lasso tool the area that I don't want to have painted and then move it out the picture. There's just one tiny bit on the leg here, like that, and yeah, that's just a bit of extra color to the a bit of extra color to that texture, the clothing. I will just decrease the brightness again. I think I prefer that. Now for the final stuff, obviously the eyes are missing so far, so let's go ahead. I have adjusted everything else besides perhaps that part, but I don't have the energy for that anymore. And since I'm trying to be finished tonight because I have to continue with regular work tomorrow, I need to get this done. So yeah, and I'm sure this is a long enough video anyways. Alright, so I'm going to go on a new layer for the eyes, and with a dark color brown, I'm going to try and map out where they are. This is bringing me back to my anime days. Alright, let's go ahead and refine. So we've got a nice edge to the eye up here, and we've got a dark blue for the outline of the eye. Whoa! Let's just get this all positioned again. With a light white in the iris, around the iris, for the eyeball. Grabbing a dark blue for the inner part. We've got a light blue, even lighter to be honest. And also I'm going to erase part of the eye down there. Then we've got a slightly more purple iris. I think that's the iris. And then a bit more of a lighter blue at the top. I think I'll give that a bit more strength. And slightly lighter. Then a slightly darker outside. Slightly wider eye. Whatever that's called. I'm certainly not going to be able to call anything by the right name anymore. Slightly brighter reddish tone for the lower eyelashes. And in here also brighter. Something like that. I think that's okay for the first start. And then over here, basically this part is not going to be visible, but it's going to be important for me to sort of direct myself around with. This has got more of a purple edge really. And then a more dark blue general eye, quite saturated. A light turquoise reflection. Couple of brighter spots over here, and here it's a bit lighter as well, a bit more purple low. That was way too dark. Okay, and basically a white parting at the bottom again. This one definitely needs to be a bit bigger, I think. Slightly more like that, I think. Something like that. Something lighter for the eyelashes at the bottom. And then, oh my goodness, now it's all looking wrong. Okay, I'm just gonna roll with this for a minute and give this a little bit of a lighter edge. And also the teardrop again, actually. Okay, and now for the smile. Oh, and we've also got eyebrows. Wow, nice. New layer for safety. Oh, and we've also got eyelids that are obviously quite important. Not too dark a color really, that's a bit too dark. A bit lighter, reddish, orange, and a bit more pink and lighter for another detail for the lid. And then the smile. Eyebrows looking bushy. Something like this maybe. And slightly lighter. And then for the smile, another safety layer. These things make me nervous. We've got the nose with quite a light little thing, and then the mouth. Oh dear. Oh dear. Indeed. can one line be so difficult to place is my question every time. Every time. That's cute, but she's not really looking at us, is she? Whoa. Dark blue. And I also feel like we need a bit more of a, I don't know, longer eye. Something more like that maybe. And then here I want a bit of more darker blue. Lighter blue that sort of covers the edge here a bit more. The hair can use a little bit of a shadow. Okay, I feel like this mouth needs a bit more curve and, oh no, slightly lighter as well maybe. Oh my goodness, this doesn't look quite right, especially that eye for some reason. I will merge down what I've got so far, and then I'll duplicate it and hide one. And duplicate it anyways and merge together because, yup. And here this time, I think I need to use the liquify tool with a smaller push size. Push the eye down a bit, more cat-like shape. And the other side needs to come down a bit, I think. The other side just needs to be a bit, whoops, just a bit wider. Less long and more wide. Maybe that will do it. The mouth definitely needs to come down a little bit, I think. And also I want the mouth to be a bit lighter. I'm gonna try to saturate it a bit and then brighten it. A less strong sort of expression maybe in that way. I definitely think that's better. You tell me what you think. I might regret this in the morning. I'm going to... Oh my goodness. This definitely needs some white. But also this here looks really wonky. Okay. Hopefully that will do it. Nice. Okay, now for the actual lighting and color with an overlay layer, let's add some pink blush to the face. Really bright, and hopefully this is not going to be too saturated. Okay, I think we need to choose a different layer. Okay, hard. This is the hard light blending mode. And I'm just going to experiment and see with a really strong red. That's definitely adding a bit of blush. That would be quite strong. Okay, so gently with a darker red, this does add quite a bit of saturation, which is nice. And I want to go ahead and add a little bit in here too. That's cute. She looks very chubby here with this. I don't know if that's probably not how it's supposed to be. Do we want to add some? Sometimes people add this on the actual knees. Not that that's actually on the reference, but that's kind of cute. Okay, I want to create a new layer, and here with the add layer, go in and add some light and shine to your various ornaments with a bright orange. We're going to add the same thing for our nice jewelry. I think this is like one of my favorite parts. Every time, I know I haven't added all ornaments, I think there's something missing on her waist, but honestly I think it looks fine. Let's add some turquoise too. And in here, what a difference, nice. Oops. I usually add all sorts of highlights with this, but I'm going to keep it to the minimum this time just for time, I think. I always say that and then I just go for it anyways. So we'll find out. Adding some bright blue on the bow. Naturally in here. And we're going to correct a lot of this with the overlay layer as well in a minute. Oops. Adding some gold shine. If I had more time, I would definitely be a little bit more exact with how I place these here, but at the moment it really is just getting this done. And then on these guys, a bit of like a shine is always nice. Okay, these guys too. I'll also add some on the knees. Whoops, not that much. And in the face, we can go a bit more red with that, could be quite cute. Not sure. Not sure about that. Nah. Not in the face. Okay, and now with the final layer, the overlay layer, let's grab the Luminance Lightpen and add a couple of stars in bright blue to these thingies. And to her eyes, because special effect rules. We can add some to these too, just for fun. Only the big ones perhaps. I could swear she had some other sparkles on her, and I forgot all of that bow actually. Haha. But yeah, that's not gonna happen tonight anymore, that's for sure. Now time to really enhance that color. So with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, grab a really saturated color and just go over the areas you want to have stronger. We can also make things a little bit more dark with this blending mode layer. I'm going to add a lot of strong blue to various areas with this here right now. I really like the strong blue and I think it suits her really well. We can add another overlay layer on top for safety, and with the airbrushing, with the spray paints, where on earth are they here? With the flicks, we can go ahead and grab a lighter color and add some to the dress or the various layers as reflections of light. These are also not too strong. You can make them stronger, of course, but I'm quite happy with this strength of it, really. I'm going to go a bit more gold for these areas here, and also add those on the add layer. A couple of flicks. Like that. Special effects roll. And I would recommend putting this on a, on a separate layer if you want to be cautious. Generally speaking, maybe I should have said that earlier, but hopefully you have been able to rectify things if you haven't wanted to do it my way here. I'm going to add some in turquoise too. Okay, that's probably enough. I love these. I feel like they're flying so random, like it's not really going where I want it to go. Okay, I think that's it. That's my Furina painting tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you watched it all the way to the end, comment that 1% club. I've seen someone else do this. Comment I'm in the 1% club and I know you watched it to the end, and I will be eternally grateful because it really helps to make all of this worth it. And you can give me your 2 cents on everything. Obviously, I've forgotten a couple of things, like, I'm going to expose myself now, but like obviously the ribbon at the end here and a couple of other little things. So yeah, thank you for watching. Good night.